All right, let's talk about learned helplessness. So, this term was coined in the 1960s from a researcher that was working with dogs. And what he did was take two groups of dogs into two different phases. And in the first phase, these two groups of dogs were put in separate rooms and they received shocks. The first group could turn off the shocks by learning that their nose could touch this panel and the shocks would stop. The second group, unfortunately, could not control the shocks and nothing they did would turn it off. So in phase two, they put these same groups of dogs into a room that had a really low barrier where they could easily escape the shocks. And what they found was the group that could turn them off easily escaped, right? But the other group that could not turn them off just stayed there and endured the shocks for an extended period of time. And so what they kind of learned from this was that the perception that things are out of your control is almost equal to, if not more detrimental than really truly not having things in your control. They gave up before they even really made the effort to try to escape. And that in itself is really almost, I mean, pretty dangerous. And so they later did this study with other things, like with people in school, and then of course later in trauma survivors and just circumstances. And it's important that we talk about learned helplessness because oftentimes it's something that we don't recognize that we're doing. So if we think about those dogs in that scenario, they were relating things to what they knew, and they knew they couldn't control it in the first room, and so they made a lot of assumptions based off that. And so, as people, we make a lot of assumptions, and this is why the Bible talks about looking at the splinter in somebody else when you have a log in your eye, and that how difficult it is to kind of see the things in yourself that you can see in others. And that's why we're going to focus on ourselves first in the first part. And then the second part we're going to do is focus on how to deal with these things at work whenever we're seeing it. And that's because we can identify those pretty easily, but we have to look at ourselves first. And one of the reasons that I think that this is most important is because I went to this marriage conference, and the person there did a great job of explaining how things work from a personal standpoint, and feelings and thoughts and all those kinds of things. And you'll hear me often talk about marriage as a way to learn the concepts that we're doing. And that's just because it's so easy to relate to those. And oftentimes, most people have been in a relationship, and marriage is a lot like leading a team. And I'll explain more about that later. That doesn't necessarily matter. But right now, we're going to talk about why we're going to focus on ourselves. So he talked about us all having a hula hoop. So if you can imagine, I have a large hula hoop around me, and even though if I got and you have a large hula hoop and I get close to you, even though we will have some overlap, we cannot come together in one without removing the hula hoop and putting it over ourselves, and we're not going to do that. It's not detachable, okay? So while we can influence each other's decisions, we absolutely have no control over the other person. We only have control over ourselves. So that's why we're going to continue to focus on ourselves, because that is actually who we have control over. And we're going to talk about the influence when we talk about how to do that with your employees. So for right now, we're going to focus on ourselves. And so we're going to relate this to the Bible, because in Moses' story, we see a lot of the example of learned helplessness, and in many different ways at many different points. And I think that that's what makes it so important to talk about, is because it was a repeated pattern that they had. And I think that that really relates more to us than we might think. And so we're going to go through that. And as we go through the Bible and we talk about these particular stories, we're also going to talk about some real life instances in my own life. So we're going to get personal. And I just want to remind you that this is meant to be a conversation. I know I'm talking on a video, but if you want to comment, private message, there's also the discovery call on my website. It's free. I'm not charging you money. This is not that. Like, I want to be able to have a conversation with people, to be able to help us all grow. And as much as I will teach you, I will learn from you. And I think that it's really important that when we watch these things, that we're listening for ourselves, or listening. Maybe we're being used through someone else, and so we learn just a good way of explaining things. Doesn't necessarily matter, but we're going to kick off with with this story and learning, and we're going to talk, and I'm going to talk to you as if I know everything about you, and I'm going to challenge you to really reflect and think about yourself so we can see if that log is there. And then hopefully we're going to learn some things. And so first, I just want to kick us off in a little bit of a prayer before we start talking. And so here goes. Lord Heavenly Father, I just thank you for every person watching this video. I hope that their eyes are open, their ears are open, and that they're ready to learn your word. Lord, I ask that you be with me as I begin to teach these things. May I teach them only what comes from you, Lord. May all of the people that walk away from this situation and their situations, I'm sorry, and learnings from this video, may they be able to apply them in their future and lead people to be closer to you, Lord. In your holy name, amen. And so we're going to get started talking about Moses. We're going to provide some context for Moses' story. One thing you should know is I am not a biblical scholar. I do not claim to be. I didn't even read the Bible for the first time cover to cover until I was 40. I'm a reader by nature, and I am an advocate of learning. And also I believe that you can read things and it makes sense to you in that time frame, and you can learn from it and you can grow. And so I'm just going to share with you what my thoughts are. And if that differs from any type of ancient PhD level stuff that you have, I apologize up front. It's just a lesson, and you can put it in the comments and we can learn together. So Moses is an Israelite, okay? And the Israelites were in Egypt, and they served as slaves to the Egyptians, and the Egyptians were ruled by pharaohs. Or a pharaoh, but over time. So Moses is an Israelite, and at this time, the pharaohs recognize that the Israelites are gaining in numbers. And it's like the story on A Bug's Life. You know how, random, but it doesn't matter. On A Bug's Life, the grasshoppers overtake the ants and make them like build these food, and it's about power. And at one point, the main grasshopper is trying to teach the other grasshoppers that if the ants really come together, that they could overthrow the grasshoppers. And he warns them, right? And so this is what the Pharaoh is saying. This Pharaoh is saying their numbers are high, and if they decide to do something about this, there's a possibility that they could rise against us. And so what they decide to do about that is start killing the male babies. And you might think, why is that important? And the reality is that the men are the stronger vessel. Controversial statement is true. It is what it is, okay? So they decide that they're going to kill all the males. So Moses' mother does not want to kill him, right? So she keeps him for a while and hides him, but she can't hide him anymore. So she puts him in a basket in a river. And he floats down the river, and the Pharaoh's daughter finds him and decides to raise him as her son. But Moses' sister is watching Moses to make sure he's okay. And when she sees the Pharaoh's daughter pick him up, she goes over there, very strategic, love that about her, goes over there and says, hey, do you basically need a wet nurse, somebody to feed him? And she's like, yes, go find me somebody from... And so she goes and gets Moses' mom. So Moses' mom still gets to take care of him. And that really makes my heart feel better about the whole situation. But so Moses' mom continues to feed him, and the Pharaoh's daughter raises him as her own. And so then, as any normal young adult will do, and just struggle with their identity and who they are and all of those other things, right? Moses is in this odd place, and he goes out there, and an Egyptian and an Israelite kind of get into it, and he does something to the Israelite, and Moses kills the Egyptian. And so then he gets scared. Someone comes runs him, but it doesn't matter. He gets scared and he runs away, okay? And so at this point, when he runs away and he's out there, this is when he has his encounter with God in the burning bush. And so God tells him that he's going to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and into the promised land. And Moses is like, me, so he's kind of skeptical about the whole thing. And then he tells him, I guess, a speech problem. People often say he has a speech impediment or he stutters or whatever. It doesn't necessarily matter. He tells God that he doesn't speak well. So God tells him that his brother Aaron's going to help him. And so whatever this speech impediment problem is, he has it. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's obviously not crippling to whatever he's going to do, because he's one of the main figures of the Old Testament. And so he and Aaron are going to go get the Israelites out of Egypt. And they go and, of course, try to convince the Pharaoh, and they have all these plagues and all of these things, right? And so we're going to start there, somewhere in there. And we're not going to necessarily go over every piece of the Bible. I'm giving you a very Cliff Notes version. But we're going to just talk about like emotions and different pieces of the story. Okay, so the main thing to know in this is that the Israelites have been slaves, okay? They have that slave mentality. And that in itself, we know, is kind of like a learned helplessness scenario. Because we also know that the Pharaoh knew that they could overthrow them. So already they're in a state of learned helplessness. And that's where they start, okay? So now Moses goes and tells them that they're going to free them. And at first, they're really excited, right? They think, "Oh, he's going to save us," right? Well, then Moses and Aaron go talk to the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh does this back and forth thing several times, and God punishes the Pharaoh. And not that's not it. I'm not going to use the word punish. God demonstrates his power to the Pharaoh in order for the Pharaoh to eventually release them. And so when Moses and Aaron first start this adventure and they have the staff that turns into a snake and all those other things, the Israelites are excited. But then when things aren't necessarily going well and the plagues start, that's when the Israelites are like, hold the phone. Like, wait a minute. They even use the phrase, "May the Lord judge you for making us a stench to the Pharaoh" in Exodus. Like, you're going to get in trouble for making us a target to the slave owners. Like, why would you do that? And they they really went back and forth. And so this is the first time that not the first time, because the first time is their initial state. This is the first time that we see them fall back into that. And so we fall back into this state of learned helplessness. And I think that we see this in real life all the time, right? Like, we work really hard for something. Maybe like, okay, let me give you, this is a good example. I went to school. I worked all the time. I worked throughout since I was 13. So when I got out of nursing school, you have this belief that you are going to go and you're going to earn money and you're not going to struggle anymore, right? So you're so excited, like, it is happening. I am graduating. I am going to be able to go live my life. This school phase of mine is over. I'm going to be making money. I'm going to have all these things. And then you go get your first job and you're like, what? What is this? The bills start rolling in. It's so, being an adult, 2 out of 10, it's so stinking hard, and you're just like, oh my gosh, right? And so if you're not careful about all that, you can start to resent school, or maybe even some of those people who get degrees and they necessarily can't find a job, or all those kinds of things. You can kind of get kind of resentful, right? This momentary joyful feeling is now gone. And instead of like kind of trying to hold it steady and keeping the faith, we just kind of fall back into this pattern. And it's really, really hard to kind of keep that joyful attitude, especially when we want to see everything wrong with the situation. And if we really compare to the Israelite situation, they are getting plague after plague after plague after plague. I mean, things are happening that are supernatural, and they are watching this firsthand thinking, I'm sure that there's a level of feel there. Like, I'm not going to say I am a faithful follower of Christ. All right. But if he showed up in front of me, you better believe not only would I be like, very happy, but I'd also have another set of fear in me that like I know the Lord is real, and I do have a healthy dose of fear, but now I'm going to have even more, a little bit of fear, and thinking he's going to say, do I know you? And so it's just something to consider that they were there witnessing this firsthand. So I'm not saying that I can't necessarily understand it, because I can't imagine. I can't imagine watching a million frogs or locusts or changing river colors, or I mean, I don't know. I really don't know how I would feel in this situation, but one of the things that I think that's important is that when we first have that initial joy and to recognize that fallback, we got to recognize it so that we can make the changes that we need to make. Because then here comes what happens next, right? So then when they start to leave Egypt, so now the Pharaoh lets them leave. Like now, even he's afraid, right? And so they left and they were so bold and joyful. And I just want to say this, they left and they were free. Okay? So they are they have left, okay? And now they're getting close to the Red Sea and they see the Egyptian army. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's not a pivotal moment, like you can clearly see them. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't have thoughts or feelings about that, but let's just take a minute to really understand that they're free, they're massive numbers. And sometimes we get so confused about how many people Moses actually walked across the Red Sea. And I will tell you, I'm guilty of this. And I'm not, don't judge me. I would think about those cartoons that I would see, those little cartoon videos or whatever, and they would have like a little group of people. No, Moses was 600,000 men strong. Men, not women, not children, not animals, not all of their belongings. Men, 600,000 men strong. I don't know how much your nearest stadium can hold, but 600,000 men strong on the Israelite side. And so this is how many people, animals, women, children, how many people walked through there that he led away from the Egyptians, right? And so they see that they have all this stuff. They see the Egyptian army coming, and they say it would have been better to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. And so here we have this the second time that we're falling back into learned helplessness. And it's immediate. It's visual. I see something bad coming my way, and here I go again, and I'm falling into this. And I can tell you, I'm going to share a very personal thing about myself. And so um, I uh, I can see this coming up a lot in some things, especially when we don't really have faith that people will change. And I did this. I was like this in particular with my husband. So this is neither here nor there, but me and my husband met in high school, and one of the things that we had commonly said about each other were that we were not going to necessarily be in an alcoholic home. So, not that life doesn't happen. I mean, we were kids when we were making those promises. You just know that if you make a promise to me, I'm probably going to carry it to my grave. But anyway, so we grow up and we're in our 20s, and I graduated college, and so he was set to graduate in August, but in June of that year, his mom committed suicide. And so things changed for us a little bit after that, and it was a really hard place for both of us. We had just gotten married, and we were moving back home to be closer to our family, but now, his mother is gone, and we move home, and we both start working full-time jobs, no kids. And so we're in this weird place, and I had I mean, just I I have so many things wrong with me that you wouldn't even believe, but I wanted to buy a home, and I made a big deal about it, and made a way. And I'll explain that maybe one day in the future when I confess my sins. I made a way for us to buy a home. And I just really put us in a place, in a bind financially when I made some of the decisions that I made. And it was really just a hard time for us. And so we see this transition of people that were hanging around and doing different things. And so he starts drinking more. Personal trauma, I really don't like that. I don't want to be around it. It was something I really didn't want for myself, didn't want for my kids, all of those kinds of things. So it was something we would fight about a lot. Well, then he would say, okay, well, I'll quit drinking. And so here we are. Here we're saying, I'm leaving that behind. Okay, no more. And the moment that I thought I saw the Egyptians in the horizon, I didn't have to actually see them. I only thought I saw them. And the moment I thought that he might be drinking again, I was a terrible person. Okay, you think that the Egyptians were smart when they said it would have been better to serve them and whatever petty. I was even more petty. and I'd be saying all kinds of things. And I definitely did not make it easy. Okay. I made it a lot harder for somebody who was, if they were really trying to quit drinking, I made it painfully hard. And I don't know if, I mean, obviously I can't redo that, right? But I don't even know how many times I did that. And I look at these Egyptians and I think, you saw miracles of God when you saw all those plagues. Moses got you out of there, and yet you still have an attitude about the situation. And you would rather go back to your old life than really even remotely try harder to turn around and deal with the things that you're dealing. And if they had had faith for just a little bit longer, if they just kept themselves to the faith, just a tad bit longer, okay? They would have seen Moses part the Red Sea and they would have crossed and it wouldn't have been a big deal. But instead, they got ugly before that, right? And so then God parts the Red Sea and they go through, and again, they're happy, right? And so this is one of the other things that I think sometimes we get confused about. We want our life trajectory to just kind of go up like this. And like, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty bad about this. Like, if we like stop instead of like letting it plateau and just kind of keeping it like, okay, I'm going to keep steady. I have faith. I'm doing this. We 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 are so terrible that we just start to make it seem and believe that it's going down. Okay, that if it's not going up, it's going down. But there is the ability to plateau. We can plateau. All right, we can be faithful. It is possible. We can be faithful. Just like if I step back when I saw the Egyptians and I said, and I believe, if I let God save me, God is going to save me from this, or whatever. If I have faith, if I do that, then I can remain in this plateau if I let Him. But oftentimes we don't, right? We just plummet, okay? If it's not going great, it's going bad. And that's not true, okay? We can remain in the faith and say, this isn't my best season, but it is a season that I'm going to get through. And this, I have all that I've done to get to this point, and I can carry that with me. But instead, we tried to make it go down. And so we see this in them, right? Well, then they walk across, and of course, they're all happy, right? All of a sudden, they're joyful, they're dancing, and they're crossing and everything. And then they see the Red Sea kind of um, crash into the Egyptians and ultimately really potentially end whatever battle that would have been. And so they really should, at this point, be the best they've ever been. Like, now you should know without a doubt in your mind that God is going to save you from and give what He promised you, save you from the Egyptians and take you into the promised land. And then right after that miracle, and seeing, I mean, I just can't even imagine, like, really, can you think about, if you ever been to the Georgia Aquarium? It's so big and so beautiful. But if you can imagine, like, just walking through water and having this cleared your way, and water on both sides of you, and walking through that, and just the miracle of that itself, what attitude of posture of your heart would you have at the end of that? Like, I would think that if I saw some big miracle like that, that there would be, I would be a nun. I would be the all serving of the Lord, having witnessed those things. And so, but what ends up happening is they end up going to the wilderness, and they come back even more than, I mean, stronger almost than when they were enslaved. They start complaining about all of the things that this different type of lifestyle. It was a little bit harder, but they weren't enslaved, right? But it was a little bit harder, right? And so that didn't really sit well with them. And so they grumbled about water, and he made, I mean, I'm just saying this again, that Moses made water, well, God did, but Moses hit the rock and made water come out of the rock, and still we have a bad attitude about it. They complained about food and said that Egypt was better. enslavement is better from a food perspective, and so he gives them fresh food every morning. They were eating manna, and then they were upset, and then they wanted meat, and then he makes birds fall out of the sky, and still we just have like these terrible attitudes. And I'm going to tell you this, okay? After seeing miracle after miracle after miracle, to be in a place of such unbelief is the word that I'm going to use. Unbelief in the Lord is absolutely insane to me, or it was until I started talking and praying about this particular lesson. And it came to me, and I thought, because the thought came to me, and I said, I don't think I could be so unbelieving. And the Lord said, can you? And I thought, oh, that's so good. How many times, or how many of you have experienced a true move of God in your life and still turned away to him afterwards? How many? And I knew exactly what moment he was talking about. Although God has shown up so many times in my life, I have no doubt in my mind. But I can remember the first time, the very, very first time that I knew there was no doubt in my mind that the Lord was with me. And I think about that day, and I think about that feeling, because I will never, ever, ever forget the way that I felt the first time I had no doubt that it was him. And so I'm going to tell you the story, but when I told you my husband's mom committed suicide, okay? And I told you that I would do anything to get a house, and I'll tell you that story another time, but we're going to talk about this house. Okay, we're going to talk about this story. So I was working as a nurse. I was working night shifts. So I had worked 3 nights in a row, and I was supposed to be off for several days because I was going to come back to Houston. I lived in Nacogdoches at the time. I was going to come back to Houston and stay and meet with a broker and do different things for the house, okay? So I'm in Nacogdoches. I get off my shift. It's about 7:30, and I drive all the way back to Houston, about 3.5 hours. And I'm going straight to go meet the broker for lunch, okay? And so I go and I meet the broker for lunch, and I'm there for an hour and a half, 2 hours or something like that. And then I go to my sister's house, and I'm laying on the floor playing with my nieces and nephews. And I remember holding them up in the air and laying on her floor and playing and playing and playing. And I'm sitting on the floor, and when I feel the Holy Spirit, and I hear, and I know that he's talking to me, I feel it in my chest. I've heard lots of people say they feel it in different places, but I feel it in my chest. But I feel it in my chest because that was this was kind of my first time experiencing this. I know this now, but I didn't necessarily know this then. But I feel this feeling in my chest, and I hear over and over and over again, go home, go home. Now, mind you, I haven't slept. By this point, it's darn near, getting on to 24 hours. I was tired. I was playing with the kids. I was supposed to sleep at my sister's house and then wake up and do all this stuff. And I remember getting up and sitting on her couch, and 2 of my sisters were there. And I look at them, and I tell them, I think I need to go home. And they're like, no, no, just go to sleep for an hour. If you need to go home after that, you can go home, but just go to sleep for a couple of hours. And I'm looking at them, and I hear it and I feel it, and it's saying, go home, get in your car and go home, go home. And I feel it and I feel it and I feel it. And I'm like, listen, guys, I have to leave. I'm gonna leave. I'm really sorry, but I need to leave. And I get in my car. Now, mind you, this was early 2000s. I didn't have a car charger, or if I did, I didn't use it. I don't know. I don't think I had one, but I did have a cell phone. And so I know that because my cell phone was almost dead. And so I turned off my cell phone because I was like, okay, well, if I need it, I need some type of battery. And I get in my car and I'm driving home. But I am crying driving home, okay? I am crying because I'm tired. I am crying because, and I'm telling myself, you're stupid. You should have just gone to sleep. Why are you like this? But I have this overwhelming feeling that I am supposed to go home. And I cannot shake it, okay? So I get over myself and I kind of stop crying, and I'm driving, and I'm about 45 minutes from home. And again, boom, it hits me even harder, and it says, turn on your phone. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I just turn on my phone. Like, by this point, I'm almost thinking I'm mentally insane. Actually, at this point, I'm thinking I'm sleep deprived, right? Because I haven't slept, right? And so I turn on my phone and I set it back down and I just drive because I'm at this point operating off of like internal things telling me what to do. And I'm driving. And about 10 minutes later, my phone rings and it's my sister. And she says, "Hey, have you talked?" This is the first time she tried to call me. She says, "Have you talked to Roger? Something happened to Debbie. Natalie called me. Something happened to Debbie. Have you talked to him? I think she's hurt. I think she's shot." And I said, "Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on. No, I haven't. Okay, thanks for telling me." So I call my husband and I tell him, and he's an acadologist, and he's like, "Okay," and he starts like making calls, right? And I'm was about 45 minutes away. So by this point, I'm pulling in the driveway and he calls me. He says, we need to go back to Houston. So I literally pull in the driveway. Remember, I was going to stay for a couple of days. So my bag was packed. He has some paper copies, printed copies of like MapQuest and different hospitals. And he gets in the car and we back out of the driveway and I go back. I'm headed back to Houston. And we are calling we're calling hospitals at this point. The police had taken his dad into custody to make sure that he wasn't the one who had fired the gun, and he wasn't. She did, and so we were calling hospitals to see if we could find out which hospital she was in. Now, at the time, I was a nurse, and the rules were different 20 years ago, and so um, I knew that if she was okay, they would say she's stable. I knew that. And we were calling around and we're like, we're looking for this 40-something-year-old white female, blah, blah, and because they didn't have her name. And we find her and then we send his brother over there and his brother drives over there. And so we're about an hour and a half in the drive at this point. And his brother calls us and lets us know that she's passed. So then his sister is somewhere. He doesn't know where his sister lives, and he doesn't have a phone number for her, but he knows that she lives in this particular area, this wooded area, somewhere in this little town. And so I'm driving still at this point, and he says, "Hey, can you pull off right here? I need to try to find my sister." And I'm like, I, I'm not mean, but I'm not exactly. I'm very much a critical thinker, and I don't operate in the willy-nilly. I don't know. This is not making sense to me. But I don't want to argue with him. He's just lost his mom. Like, what? I'll do whatever you want. So I pull over. I pull off the road, and we're driving up and down this road, and he's having me stop to anybody that's outside so that he can ask them if they know these people that she might be staying with or her. And we're driving around, and we've probably hit a good 20, 30 people at this point. And he says, "Okay, let's just go." And so I needed to drive to go turn around. And I'm going to go turn around, and there's this lady that's getting out of like this Escalade. No offense, we're not exactly of money, right? So the math ain't mathin' to ask this person, but he says, "Can you stop and ask her?" And I said, "Sure." Whatever, we already asked 30 people. So we stop and he says, "Hey, do you know so and so?" And blah, blah, blah. And she says, "I think my brother said that name before. Let me call my brother." And they call her brother, and her brother does know them and does have the number. And so we were able to find his sister so he could tell her that his mother had passed. And she gets in our car as well. Okay. So we're still headed to Houston. And about that time, his dad calls and he needs to be picked up. So we get his dad. And now there's 4 of us in the car, and we're headed to his brother's house. And there's one more brother, but he's in jail. But it just so happens that we get a call that he's going to get out at midnight. By this point, it's really late in the evening. It's almost midnight for them to go pick him up. And I really know, I know 2 things, okay? There is no doubt in my mind at all that God loves my husband. And I don't say that to be stupid. I say that to be real. And I'm not saying that God loves my husband more than he loves me, because I'm his child too. But God consistently reminds me that my husband is his child and that I need to stop. Okay. And it's kind of been that way my whole life, but God doesn't necessarily play favorites, but I also believe that a little bit that he might be his favorite. And so, and if you know him, you know why. But God really loves my husband, and so um, I knew in that moment, I knew exactly who it was. I knew that I needed to be there for my husband. I knew that God had sent me back to go get him, and I knew that God was going to take care of everything that he needed in that moment, because it was going to be hard for him. Okay. And my husband was very faithful, um, and he believed that committing suicide was a sin and that they wouldn't go to heaven. And that really messed my husband up. That mindset. And so I really saw a big shift in him, and I really kind of felt almost like I had lost him during that time. But I knew that God strategically placed me there, and I had no doubt in my mind that I was supposed to be there. And the reason why this is just such a pivotal moment was that shortly after that, um, I would stop going to church. I would start being a jerk to his son. I mean, lots of different things, right? But that's neither here nor there. Okay. But and just to kind of clarify the statement, at the time, my husband was in a history major. And remember, I told you it was in June and he was going to graduate in August. And so he was with his history teacher. And his history teacher was somebody who had almost, well, I guess he'd done some of priesthood or something like that. But for whatever reason, he decided to become a historian instead of going into the faith, but still very faithful. And so he told Roger something that changed his life and kind of gave me my husband back a little bit, because I think that there's a lot of things that went wrong after that, but that's fine, a little bit. It gave him a peace about the situation that I don't think that he had, and I don't think still honestly that he has a lot of closure from the loss of that type of loss. But anyway, um, one day he stayed after class and he spoke to that professor, and that professor told him that did he think that his mom was depressed? And he said, oh yes, she was we knew that, blah, blah, all those other things. He said, depression is an illness. Do you think that God would deny somebody who is ill? And Roger was like, well, no, I mean, no, he would not. And then so he said, well, then why do you think that he would deny your mom? And, you know, how true of a statement is that? That we are not here to determine, we're not at the gates judging who gets in and who doesn't get in. We are here to have faith and that God is going to make it for our good, and that we have to be faithful to that. But I don't believe, and he doesn't believe, that God is going to take somebody who's ill and deny them entry or anything like that. And a lot of times people are like, "Oh, you're just manipulating the faith." Oh, okay. Does God talk to you on a regular basis? Does God send you messages? Do you turn away from him? Because I'm pretty sure that we sit there and we say things like, God, send me a sign that this is the right thing to do. And then he sends you the sign and you're like, wait, I don't know if that was my mind, or I don't know what that was. Do it again. Just show me another sign so that I know that it's you. And then he does. And then you're like, wait. I think that's me. Like, we are so like the Israelites, okay? We experience these miracles, we experience this communication with God, and then we become the sense of doubt, the sense of learned helplessness. Like, we're sitting there saying, God couldn't have made my nose touch that panel. That wasn't God. That was a mistake. It was a glitch in the shock, right? God didn't do that. Well, God did do it. Okay, and we have to let him do it. And this is why I say, if I let him, okay, because he can send me every signal that I have in the world, and if I don't let him send me that signal and I continue to deny that signal, it isn't him not sending me the signal, it is me not allowing myself to escape. And this is why it is so important to answer the question, if I let him. If I let him. if I let him move in me, if I let him be the God that he says I'm going to be, I'm going to go to that promised land if I let him take me there. If. This is such a big if. And we see these Israelites talking about all of these different things and still watching water come from a rock, watching just all of these birds fall from the sky because you said you wanted meat, and we still act like little brats. And I really sometimes feel very convicted over that. And I have to apologize and say, Lord, I'm so sorry. The repentance is there. Like the unbelief, I really can't say that enough. Okay. So then, so, so, so I'm going to remind you that it is if I let him. All right. It is those moments of not turning away after seeing a miracle. It is allowing yourself to experience the blessings. Another example that I'll give you is that people often talk about how a lot of people can't receive compliments. I'm this way. I remember I went and listened to this leadership talk, and he was talking about being able to receive compliments, and that was what we were supposed to walk away with. And not 2 minutes later, I went up to the chief medical officer and said something, and he paid me a compliment. And I was like, oh no, and he said, you're supposed to learn how to take a compliment. And I really do kind of struggle with that. And so here we go again with this concept of you have this blessing, but you don't allow yourself to receive it, right? So somebody comes to you and says, hey, thank you, you made a big difference in me. And you say, oh, that was just a coincidence. I didn't even know you were going to be there. Like, no, you are a vessel in which God operates. Girl, that was the Lord. I mean, you can give Google the Lord credit. And I'm grateful I was there. And I'm grateful he allowed me to be used in that manner. We have to start saying things differently. We have to be able to get out of that box and help people grow, not only themselves, but in faith. If I sit there and I just say, oh, it was a coincidence, we were just lucky. Okay. Okay. Oh, we're not blessed anymore, right? And then I hear that whole concept. Let me tell you something. The concept of lucky girl, sin, whatever it is, where people go and they pretend like they're the lucky girl. That is a method of overcoming learned helplessness. You are tricking your brain into thinking that you can escape every barrier because you are lucky. But really, you are just touching your nose to that panel because you know it's there, because you've decided in your mind that you're going to be lucky and you can get yourself out of that. It's all a mindset. If you have enough faith, then your nose will constantly, you might get shocked. Nobody ever said you weren't going to get shocked. Nobody, not even in the Bible does it promise you that you're not going to get shocked. There is no guarantee. Actually, there is a guarantee. There is a guarantee you're going to get shocked. But how long is it going to take you to touch your nose to that panel? How long? How long are you going to allow yourself to continue to get shocked before you to have enough faith in the Lord that he is going to get you out of the situation that you are in? That you are going to go touch your nose to that panel at the right time in the right moment, or you are going to go escape because the barrier is low. How many times are you going to allow yourself to get shocked? I can't ask you that any other way. So then once we overcome that part, and we say we're going to let him, okay? But let's just use another example of the Israelites, right? So then we just left Exodus and we're moving into Numbers, and they're at the edge of the promised land, and he sends people over to go scout. And what do they say? We can't do it. We can't attack those people. They're stronger than we are. So again, immediately, right? Immediately back into that learned helplessness. The Lord didn't let that first generation enter the promised land because they could not move past that learned helplessness. Do you hear me? The Lord did not let them in. He let them die off. And the Bible says that you're going to say, Lord, Lord. And he will say, I never knew you. Do you see the correlation there? That first generation refused to have the faith that it was going to take to get them where they were going to be. The second group, the one that didn't necessarily know that, the second generation didn't necessarily know that learned helplessness in the same manner, had seen those things, had enough faith, we're going to get to go in. But then somebody came back and taught them they're too big, they're too strong. So somebody's hula hoop influenced them to make them afraid. They never saw the people. They didn't know what they were going to get into. They could have they could have walked into that blind. I think the Lord still would have helped them, but somebody else came back and gave them the perception that what they could and couldn't do. And it's terrible. So how many times has somebody come and told you something and you took it at absolute faith that what they said was over what God told you you could do? How many times? How many times have we allowed ourselves to step away from a situation because we think we're not good enough, or maybe we think we are good enough, but we go and we listen to somebody and we get ourselves in trouble. My husband is what is my husband? My husband is a football coach, and he works in an area that doesn't necessarily it has a lot of kids who struggle, okay? And so one of the things that we kind of pray about are these kids and their situations, and that honestly that they stay out of jail. And the sadness that he feels when he comes home and he tells me that somebody went to jail or got shot or something like that. It's one of the reasons why he's God's favorite son, is because he cares about people in that manner, and he really wants these kids to succeed. He has a deep desire to be a mentor to these kids and to let them know that they can overcome things because he did. And to be an example, and I really love that for him. But the fact that we can have all of these things and we can allow somebody to influence us. And I see this all the time in those football kids. They'll make it. They have big NIL money right now, and somebody from the past, somebody comes in and just influences their decisions and changes their trajectory completely. Or somebody, and maybe, and I saw one of them even unfortunately committed suicide. Like, I don't know what was going on in their life, but how much hurt that these young men must carry, how much weight and everything that they must carry that those kinds of things happen. All these players, all these I've seen it multiple times, but all because somebody may or may not influence you and tell you what you're capable of and what you're not. Do you want to know who's the most capable people? The people who don't take no for an answer. I look at people like Tom Brady, who says that, when he went to college, he was like the third string quarterback, and that he only got 2 plays in, but that he was upset at first, and then he thought, well, if I'm only going to get 2 plays, I'm going to make sure that those are the best 2 plays that I can possibly do each day, and that's going to be my goal. And 2 plays turned into 4, and 4 turned into however many. This is his story. So the people who will not allow themselves to be contained in a box, or to have that faith that what they're looking for is going to change, their circumstances are going to change, that there is a level of control. Even if you have to search for what that level of control is within your hula hoop, they find every square inch of their hula hoop that they can control, and they control it and make it for their good, make it better. They're going to follow whatever it is. Those people are more successful than people who believe that they're stuck. Can you imagine if no one believed that they could do things? Do you comprehend that we would not have cars, we would not have computers, we would not have phones, we would not have eyeglasses, we would not have anything if we really believed the things that people try to make us believe? I think that allowing somebody to influence you in a manner that is restrictive should be something that you think very carefully over. Very, very carefully. If it's to propel you forward and it's going to help you, okay, less caution. If they are an encouragement to you. There is a There is a spiritual gift, exhoration, the power of motivation. So I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about somebody who instills fear in you. I'm worried about the delay in your blessings because you believe somebody or allow them to distract you from the goal. We cannot allow people to come and tell us what our fears are, because if you do, they become more powerful than the God who says, I can do all things. True? False? I kind of think it's true. I think it's important to remember. I think we have control over our hula hoop, and it's up to us to take care of it. And then once we figure out how we're going to take care of it, we're going to believe in all of the promises that we've been given, because we were promised that promised land. It was paid for, not by you, but it was paid for. And it's our right to get there. And are we going to be more like the Israelites than we care to be? I don't know. I don't necessarily know that I always have the answer, and I'm not saying that, again, I don't get shocked, because I get shocked all the time. I mean, there's a reel out there that tells you that I needed to be prayed for because I kind of had a bad attitude about something, but that's not the point. The point is not the shock. The point is to not be trapped in the box. The point is not to believe that even if I can't get out right away, that I can't get out. The point is to continue to get out, to continue to have faith, to continue to try and find the way that was meant to get you out, and to learn to be different in the future, and to learn to be positive, and to learn to get rid of that learned helplessness that we may carry. I think that that's really important when it comes to mindset and positivity and where we're going and how we feel on a daily basis and how we carry ourselves and the way that we behave, because all of those things are integrated. You cannot tell me that you are the most positive person and then walk into work every day and say nothing but negative things. I don't believe you. I don't believe that can exist synonymously. So you're either positive and you have some negative every once in a while, because I don't believe anybody is truly positive all the time, or you're negative and you don't believe for whatever period of time. And then you may flip, but you're not you can't say the same thing at the same time. So, well, actually you can. If it's a different topic, I'll take that back. If it's a different topic, you can, but on the same thing. So let's keep going a little bit, okay? So then we see Moses hit a point and learned helplessness, okay? So now now all of these things have happened. The first generation has kind of, I don't know if the first generation was gone or not. They might have both been there. But Moses loses his patience with these people and with all of it. And God tells him he's going to give him water again, and God tells him to speak to a rock. And the first time he told him to hit it. The second time he told him to speak to it. And I was reading some articles about why that was, and I encourage you to go read it because it's a very interesting read, but it doesn't matter. The second time he told him to speak it. But what does Moses do? Because Moses is mad. Moses is over it, okay? He's moved millions of people, figured out how to lead them, they're jerks, whatever, all of this stuff, and then he allows all of that to influence who he is, and he gets mad, and God tells him to speak to a rock and make the rock have water, and Moses takes that staff and hits it twice, actually. And God tells him that he's not going to get to enter the promised land because of it. Can you imagine allowing other people to influence your hula hoop so much so the biggest blessing of your life is now blocked because you didn't let him? Like, how sad that must have been for Moses to never get to take them over. And Joshua, a military leader, eventually gets to take them over. I want to challenge you to control your hula hoop and to really think about what it is that you're doing in your life and what you're allowing other people to do inside your hula hoop and how you're letting it affect you that may keep you in a place that you don't want to be in. And I'm not saying that you didn't get shocked. I'm not saying that all of those things didn't happen to you. They absolutely happen. But we have a choice. And we have a choice to remain there, and we have a choice to leave the circumstances behind and to escape or to find a way to stop the shocks, even if we're in the same room. Because I really think that the times that we have absolutely no control over any particular portion is almost non-existent, because we always have control over ourselves and our mind. So even if I have to endure the shocks, I can change my mentality on how I endure the shocks. And when I look at when I read the Bible for the first time and I looked at all of the different things and how angry God was in the New Testament, if you read it as if you are a leader, as if you remember that these are people, and I told you I find value in every single people, and we do lead people. But if you think about it, if these were bosses and these were employees, and all they had to do was believe in you, that was their job, was to exist and to believe in you, and they continue to fail to do their job, Moses wasn't so different than God. God got mad too. Okay? Moses got mad and hit the rock, didn't get to go to the promised land, but God got mad multiple times, wiped people out. So it's not, we are made in his image. It's not that that's not necessarily going to happen, but we need to make sure that when we are in those situations that we do remain in control of our thoughts, and we do remember what our purpose is and why we're doing what we're doing, because ultimately it's going to be what affects us in the future, or how we're perceived, and what actions we take. Because had Moses really just kind of been like, Moses could have been faithful. He could have been, okay? He could have said, God has gotten me out of every single situation I have been in this far. Why wouldn't he get me out of this one? Lord, they need some water. Like, he could have. He didn't, obviously, and so if we've been provided this book, okay? We've been provided this lovely book that's going to help lead us and give us instructions. My husband likes to say that that's why they call it the Bible, basic instructions before leaving earth. Bible, basic instructions before leaving earth. That if they've given us this, then we should learn from it. And I think that I read this story. It was my third time reading Moses' story that I really got the concept of learned helplessness. When I read the Bible the first time, I was really just in shock. Okay, like I first of all, so I like to read. Well, I haven't been reading that. I've been just reading my Bible now, but I would read fantasy. I would read romance novels. I would read suspense books, those kinds of things, okay? And so reading the genealogy in the Bible is not my favorite thing, but I do it anyway, okay? And what I do is, now it's easier, and I do have a plan now. I'm doing a plan with a friend from work, but what I did the first time was I didn't set any rules. I just said, okay, every time that you want to read, because I'm a reader, I was just picking up the book and reading. And if I didn't want to read, then I would just say, okay, well, you have to read for at least like 3 minutes. To set a timer, read for 3 minutes. And then I wanted to start, then I would get to these points where I like want to read. I would want to know what happened. So when I'm reading it the first time, I'm just in utter shock that this is like, this is how it went. are you serious? Like, I mean, I don't know. I guess I thought that if people saw the Red Sea part, that they would just be cool, you know, that they would be like, oh, we're gonna follow God. And you know, I don't really know what influences people to the extent that it does uh, that they would be like they are. I just also want to say this out loud. I know this is stupid, but I told y'all that the kind of employee that I didn't like were the ones where the rules didn't really apply to them. And you know who that is in the Bible in the story of Moses? It's Aaron. Aaron is Moses' brother, right? And so, but they didn't like grow up together like brothers, but they're brothers and that means something to them as adults, right? But um, Aaron doesn't get in trouble at the same level as some of the other people. You see him have like a softer version of God than maybe some. And it makes me laugh because like like he he really is the true example of people that have rules that don't have rules. And I'll give you a clearer example. Aaron makes fun of Moses' wife, and he does something. God punishes him a little bit, but Aaron kind of continues to kind of mess up a little bit. But when Moses goes to Mount Sinai, and he goes up on the mountain, he's going to talk to God, and God's going to give him these tablets. Okay, when Aaron stays behind to lead the people. And do you know what Aaron does? Aaron builds a metal calf for them to worship something else. Like, like this is why I'm saying that I don't understand how people are influenced. Aaron made a calf, and like I don't really know the historical reference, but when you read it, it sounds like Aaron says, like, I didn't even know what I was making. A calf just came out of it. Like, I don't, it makes me think like you, you personally went and spoke to the Pharaoh to say all that God was going to do and that he was the only God and all those other things. And you made a calf. And you know what? I don't remember what his punishment was, but it wasn't big. Okay. And even then, like or actually probably go back a couple chapters, but no, go up, go forward. Aaron's sons are going to be consecrated to be in the priest, to be in the temple. And they do something at the altar wrong, and God burns them up. So their penalty is death. Aaron makes another god, and he's got a slap on the hand. Doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't make sense to me how we let people influence us sometimes. And I would tell you that if we have to make a couple of rules going forward, the lessons that I would like for you to take away from this is, number one, do not have unbelief to where you think that the barrier is not low in where we're at. You will still have shocks, but the barrier is low. And your unbelief is going to be what makes you not be able to get out of that box. Your unbelief. Okay? So you have to go and ask yourself, if I let him. Okay? And you can change the verbiage. It's not necessarily, I mean, obviously, I think every sentence doesn't end in if I let him, but you have to think about that. Okay? Then you go into the second part and you say, okay, well, I'm going to monitor how I let people influence me and my decisions and how I move forward. I'm going to be strategic in how I allow others to influence me, because I'm not going to be like Aaron and make a calf the moment I feel like I am slightly leaderless in the situation. Okay? I have a clear leader. The Lord is my leader. I have a clear purpose. My purpose is to be more Christ-like. And if I want to be more Christ-like, then I have to be more Christ-like. I have to do good deeds. It's not that I have to do good deeds to get to heaven. It's that I want to do good deeds because I want to be Christ-like. I want, not I have to. Forget that. That's not a thing. My purpose is to be more like Christ. My purpose is to refine myself. And you will see that all throughout the Bible about talking about making yourself better and how to make yourself better. And nowhere in there does it really say that you need to like go out and like, well, it talks about like evangelist stuff, missionary helping training and all those other kinds of things. But nowhere out there does it talk about controlling other people and their emotions and those kinds of things. It really talks about you controlling and talks about how to do that. And then it talks about how to get other people to go and do the same things. Because as long as I introduce you to a relationship with Christ, then ideally you would do that same thing, right? So ideally, if I know Christ as my Lord and Savior, then I'm going to want to do the things that of the Bible that seek that refinement. And and then if I'm in that place and I know what I'm supposed to do, my barrier is always low. It is, because I can do anything. Because there's faith of a mustard seed moves mountains. Do you see the difference? So then we have to be strategic about how we allow other people to influence us. And next, with when we talk about employees, we'll learn how to manage it to influence others. So if you enjoyed this, you can comment and ask me questions. You can message me on any of the social media apps. You can email me at info@lightbeneathmyfeet.com or any of those things. And so I appreciated it if you were listening.